It is the morning of July 16, 1054. Inside the massive, echoing walls of the Hagia Sophia, a furious French cardinal named Humbert marches directly up to the altar. He drops a sealed parchment on the stone, a papal decree excommunicating the Patriarch of Constantinople. Before the day is out, the Patriarch strikes back, issuing an excommunication of his own against the papal delegation. In a matter of hours, the Christian world formally splits in two. This exchange of bureaucratic hostility was the boiling point of an 800-year chain reaction involving cultural drift, language barriers, and political maneuvering. This map shows the early governance of the Church. It operated under a system called the Pentarchy, where authority was roughly distributed across 5 major Mediterranean cities. Rome, however, claimed ultimate supremacy. They based this on spiritual lineage, arguing that since the apostles Peter and Paul were both martyred and buried within their city limits, whoever sat in the Roman bishop's seat held absolute authority over all Christians. Constantinople viewed things through a distinctly political lens. It was the bustling capital of the Roman Empire, and following a long-standing tradition, the reigning emperor was considered the ultimate head of religious matters. As long as one side claimed power through ancient graves and the other through an active throne, their definitions of authority remained irreconcilable. This map illustrates the 395 AD political division of the Roman Empire. That split drew a hard cultural border across the continent. You had a west heavily dominated by Latin and an east that communicated almost entirely in Greek. By the 5th century, Rome's complex theological letters sat unread in Constantinople because nobody could accurately translate the Latin. Eventually, the Byzantine court ignored them entirely. Cut off, religious customs drifted apart. The East allowed bearded, married priests, while the West required clean-shaven celibacy. Losing a shared language meant they stopped debating ideas and started viewing each other with deep suspicion. The logistical hurdle mutated into outright cultural alienation. Then came a breaking point in doctrine. In 589, Western councils unilaterally added 3 words to the core statement of faith. By stating the Holy Spirit proceeded from the Father and the Son, a phrase known in Latin as the Filioque, they aimed to elevate Jesus to combat local heresies. Because of the language barrier, it took decades for the East to even notice this theological shift. When Greek scholars finally translated the updated text, they were outraged, viewing the unilateral edit to their founding document as an unforgivable heresy. The final unraveling began with politics. In 726, the Byzantine emperor banned the veneration of religious icons. The Pope in Rome forcefully rejected this decree, severely straining their alliance. A few decades later, Rome faced an encroaching army from a Germanic group called the Lombards. Knowing the Byzantine emperor couldn't help, the Pope turned north, securing a military alliance with the Frankish king, Pepin the Short. Pepin crushed the Lombard army and transferred a massive stretch of conquered Italian territory directly to the papacy. Overnight, the Pope became a secular king with his own borders. With sovereign land and the military protection of the Franks, Rome no longer needed the Byzantine Empire. The political dependency that had kept the two churches chained together was permanently severed. The ultimate insult landed in the year 800, when the Pope crowned the Frankish king Charlemagne as the new emperor of the West. This was a blatant rejection of the reigning Byzantine empress in Constantinople. Looking at this map of mid-11th century southern Italy, you can see Norman invaders rapidly conquering Byzantine territories, inheriting Greek-speaking churches in the process. In 1053, the Pope ordered these newly conquered Greek churches to adopt Latin rites or face closure. The Patriarch of Constantinople retaliated immediately by shutting down every Latin church within his own city limits. This local dispute over language and liturgy in Italy escalated the friction into a diplomatic crisis, driving Cardinal Humbert to confront the Patriarch in the Hagia Sophia the following year. Despite the dramatic excommunications in 1054, everyday Christians living in shared regions barely noticed the diplomatic rupture. For decades, they continued to live and worship peacefully side by side. It took the brutality of the Crusades to weaponize this political friction. The ideological split reached its end in 1204, when Latin crusaders horrifically sacked Constantinople, slaughtering their fellow Christians. The Great Schism grew from centuries of imperial friction, shifting borders and translation errors. a slow erosion of the shared language that once held the Roman world together.